Okay, that's our 6:30. We're going to get going. I'll try and make sure I watch for anybody that is still trying to log on. I don't want to keep you guys here later than you have to. I'm sure you all have worked a very long day, a long week, and it's only Monday. But welcome tonight to Evening with the Experts. Tonight's topic is abilities and inclusivity. This is a really big hot topic in early childhood. I'm sure that's why we have so many of you here tonight is you came with hoping to find some tips, some help, and we've got two amazing experts tonight that hopefully will give you guys some tangible things that you can walk away with. If you haven't been on any of these series, here's a quick rundown of the flow. So you're going to meet the experts. So basically, why would you want to listen to them, right? We're going to identify the problem. We're going to let the experts speak to it. And then any pre-submitted questions or scenarios, we'll address them. And then if you guys have any thoughts, concerns, or questions that you want to ask the experts, then you'll have time at the end as well. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Tessa and allow herself to introduce herself.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. So I'm Tessa Burke. I'm the Child Find Coordinator for Rapid City Area Schools. I graduated from Black Hills State with a triple major, special education, early childhood education, and elementary education. The first 5 years of my career, I taught at Rapid Valley Elementary as a special education preschool teacher. And then for the last 6 years, I've been doing the Child Find Coordinator for the district. Um, and I have a husband that we just celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary. And then we adopted our miracle baby, Nora, and she's 2.5. And I look forward to working with all of you. I will put my contact information in the chat. So if afterwards you have any questions or anything, you can get a hold of me that way.
Perfect. Thank you, Tessa. She's very knowledgeable and very approachable, guys. So don't feel like any question isn't out of reach for her. All right, we're going to pop over to Kayla. Most of you know her, but let's let her give a little briefing about herself.
Yeah, most of you do know me, but my name's Kayla Herbener, and I am the program director for Starting Strong at Early Childhood Connections. I double majored. I didn't triple major like Tessa did, but double majored in early childhood and elementary education at SDSU. I taught elementary school for about 6 years before coming to Early Childhood Connections. But I also spent a lot of time in preschool and infant toddler classrooms as well. So feel like I've dabbled in a little bit of everything. I also am coming up on my 10-year anniversary with my husband. I have two littles at home, Liam and Luna. Um, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic. And I know from working with some of you that this is a topic that needs to be talked about.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm super excited for you guys to get to hear what these two amazing ladies have. So, to start off, though, I thought this quote was pretty fitting for tonight. So, we should indeed keep calm in the face of difference and live our lives in a state of inclusion and wonder at the diversity of humanity. So, you all know you work with little kiddos every day, and every child that enters your classroom, your center, your in home, they're all different, right? They bring something different and beautiful to your environment. And that's basically at the heart of what we're going to be talking about is celebrating those differences and how you guys can meet these kiddos where they're at. So they're going to give you guys some tangible tips and advice, and hopefully you'll walk away with something that you can immediately put into practice. We know this topic is really impactful. Just as Kayla and Tessa said, it drew a big crowd because of that. And it's not just a technical topic, it's definitely personal, right? We all have some personal buy-in, some story, and it makes us want to advocate for children of all abilities. And we want to make sure those children are seen and celebrated just as they are. Every day you guys work with them, and we want to provide you with the best knowledge base you can have to support their needs, whatever they may be. So, like both of these amazing experts kind of touched on, they bring a wide, diverse experience and education to it. So without further ado, we're going to get into the topic. So the importance of early intervention and advocacy. So tonight we've identified some key principles that each of the experts are going to go back and forth and talk on. The set of principles we're hoping will equip you as an early childhood educator or an educator in general, regardless of formal training, with the practical tools to recognize and support diverse abilities. It's going to encourage inclusive mindsets that prioritize belonging, access, and participation. It's going to strengthen educators' confidence in advocating for the needs of children and families. And this one definitely hits home for me because when I was in a director or administrator role, what I would come into experience with is teachers who didn't feel confident in their ability to have those conversations or to speak about what was going on. So we're hoping to provide you with some context tonight. And then the last one is that we ensure that children with developmental delays or disabilities are seen, supported, and celebrated from their earliest years. All right, we are going to hop in. So here are our key principles and practices for supporting abilities, inclusivity, and advocacy in early childhood settings. To start us off tonight, we're going to start with Kayla.
All right. So we all know that the beauty of working in a human service industry like childcare is that everybody we encounter, the kids, the parents, their grandparents, everyone has their own set of strengths, their own set of needs. And something I want to challenge you guys tonight is to kind of shift your mindset into what can this child do or what can this family do, and not get stuck on what they can't do or what is a struggle for them. And anyone who has worked with me has heard me say their society has kind of shaped this mold of what they think a child should be able to do at certain ages. So as we go through the training tonight, I'm just challenging you guys to kind of move past that mold and really focus on what each child can do. Okay, so children grow and learn in different ways and at different paces. In early childhood, we hear the terms age appropriate and developmentally appropriate a lot when we're talking about expectations or strategies. So I just wanted to take a minute to kind of differentiate the two. So age appropriate really focuses on the chronological age of a child and what they're expected to be able to do, whereas developmentally appropriate is more of a spectrum. So not all 3-year-olds are going to be in the same place developmentally. So as their caregivers, we want to make sure that we're not focusing on, well, they're 3, they should be able to do that. So we want to look at things like their temperament. And I saw Carol Foster jumped on here. She's the temperament guru. So the way children are just wired, we want to look at their home environments, and just the exposure that they've had to the world around them. Some children are exposed to all kinds of different activities, experiences, and others aren't. So when we're looking at their development, we want to keep in mind all of those different things. And also it's hard because we all tend to compare, especially if you're working in a classroom with 10 kids who are all around the same age. But you really do want to try to avoid comparisons and focus on celebrating what they can do, not maybe what they can't do yet in comparison to their peers. So this is a little graphic that I think kind of merges the ideas of age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. So this is just one example of a skill. How long should my child be able to play independently? And you see on one side, it has their year, but on the other side, there's that developmentally, that spectrum. So at 3 years old, this is the range that we might expect. Also remember that this is just one skill that a child might have. So if you have a 4-year-old and you're like, nope, they can't play independently for even 2 minutes, not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean they have a developmental delay. That just triggers us as like a little warning or a red flag to maybe investigate that a little bit further. This is another nice graphic that this could be something you give out to parents or refer to yourself. That kind of just shows the journey of development. Again, keeping in mind that it's kind of a spectrum. So it's going to look different for every child depending on, again, their temperament and their home lives. But this gives you a good idea of like, here's where we should be. This is a good guide for knowing what we want children to be able to do at each age.
All right, we're gonna pop over to Tessa now.
All right. So inclusion in schools should be a fundamental right, not just a privilege. Every student, regardless of ability, background, identity, they deserve equal access to education, the support, and the sense of belonging. Yet in many schools today, inclusion is treated as something that must be earned or like selectively granted rather than a basic human right. So in this mindset, not only is it marginalizing vulnerable students, but it's also undermining the core values of equality and justice in our education. So all children, including those with disabilities or delays, belong in the same classroom and community as all of the other students. When you are talking about inclusion, we're meaning, adapting your environment or those activities, also those expectations, so that every child can participate fully. The principle of the least restrictive environment is a cornerstone for special education, ensuring that students with disabilities have the opportunity to learn alongside their non-disabled peers to the greatest extent appropriate. LRE is just not just a placement, it's about providing the right supports and services to allow all students to thrive in those settings whenever possible. It reflects a commitment to equality, dignity, and the belief that every student belongs in the classroom. I'm now going to show you the LRE page within an IEP and what it looks like. All right. So this LRE, oh, is it showing you guys?
There it is.
Okay. So when the special education teacher is looking at placement for a child, they want to put the child in the least restrictive environment. So when we're looking at our preschool age kids, those 3 to 5 years old, we're looking at this area right here. And ultimately, we want the child to be in the setting with their non-disabled peers as much as possible. So when you look at this 310 regular early childhood setting, that just means that the child is in an early childhood setting for 10 hours or more, and that all special education services are being provided within that preschool setting. The 315.
Sorry, I think you might have shared the wrong screen because we can just see your PowerPoint. Sorry.
Okay. Well, okay. Is it showing it right now?
There you
There
go.
you go. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so then that 315 setting is meaning the child is still attending that preschool setting for 10 hours or more, but that they are being pulled out of that classroom for services. A lot of times we'll see this one marked when a kiddo is getting pulled out for, say, speech and language services, because they need to be in a more quieter environment to work on those sounds and those language development skills. The 325 is where the child is going to preschool for less than 10 hours a week and the services are being provided in the classroom. The 330 is that the child attends less than 10 hours, and again, they're being pulled out for those services. Separate class would mean that all of the students in that classroom are on an IEP. And then separate school, we haven't really ever had to deal with that one, or residential facility. Home would be if a kiddo is medically fragile and not able to attend a preschool setting, that then we would go to their home to provide those services. And then that service provider location would mean that the family is bringing the child to a school building to get their services. And again, this usually happens when it's a kiddo that is getting speech and language services. They would come to one of our buildings for that 30 minutes a week to get that service. So the special education teacher looks at this to say, what is the most appropriate setting for this child? And then they have to write a justification of why did they choose these settings and why did they reject certain settings. And so this is just kind of an example. John Doe talking about, he has been accepted. He attends a preschool less than 10 hours a week. But all the services are being provided within the classroom. So he's not being pulled out at all. So he's with his non-disabled peers for the whole time. And then we always, as a special education team, have to talk about any harmful effects that could have on a child. And usually we talk about this more once they're in kindergarten. If they're getting pulled out of really important classroom time, then that could be harmful effect on that student education. So usually in preschool, we don't really see any harmful effects, but we always want to address that and give the parent an opportunity to voice any concerns that they may have for that placement.
Excellent. Thank you, Tessa. I think it's always really helpful to have that visual, as some of you directors or even teachers have seen some of this paperwork come back, and have Tessa break it down, because the language and how it's wrote can be kind of confusing if you're not used to dealing with it on a day-to-day basis like Tessa is. Okay. Now we're going to bounce back over to Kayla.
Okay, so if you've taken probably any trainings from Early Childhood Connections, you know that we really focus on building the relationship with children and their families first. Nothing different here with children that may have special needs. So this is a highly researched topic in early childhood. And really, I've never found any research that contradicts the importance of building a relationship first. So if you'll go to the next slide, Rose. This is just a quick picture of the pyramid model, which is a framework that we use in most of our trainings. And you can see that at the very foundation of the pyramid model, we're talking about nurturing and responsive relationships. So sometimes we have to take a step back if the relationship is maybe not there yet, before we start talking about a child's development or maybe some struggles that we're seeing. So building that relationship first, not only with the child, but with their caregivers, is critical, especially when we're talking about special education. So we want to make sure that we have a warm, trusting relationship and an environment where children feel safe, because if children don't feel safe, they cannot learn. So how do we do this? In your handouts, there was a pyramid model checklist for building and maintaining positive relationships, but I just picked out a few. So we want to spend time observing children, knowing what toys they gravitate to, knowing which peers they gravitate to, how do they communicate, what makes them excited, what makes them upset. We want to increase our positive interactions. So really highlighting everything that that child is doing well, pointing out when they're trying, when they try a new skill, when they play with a new toy, when they engage in play, engage in conversations. And this is something I talk to teachers a lot about is conversation goes both ways. So in order for it to be a true conversation, there's a back and forth, whether it's verbal or non-verbal, there's some sort of back and forth with the conversation, making sure that we're getting down on the child's level, and then joining in their play, which is something most early childhood people love to do. But making sure that we're joining them and being careful not to take over the play or make it what we want it to be, but really joining in the child's play and what they are interested in. Also representing their home languages, cultures, family dynamics into the classroom, and making sure that we are sharing all of those wonderful things with families on a daily basis. So making sure that you are having more positive interactions with families than you are negative. So a lot of times when we're talking about these children who maybe have a harder time in the classroom, sometimes we get stuck on sending home the class dojo or the pro care messages that the child is struggling or they broke a rule or whatever the case may be. But making sure that you have built that relationship, you've given lots of positive feedback before you have to have those hard conversations with families.
Okay.
So we're gonna,
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, we're going to keep it with Kayla.
yes. So strengths-based language is something you're going to hear us talk about a lot tonight. And I will be very honest that this skill does not come naturally to some people. So especially when we're talking about children with developmental delays or challenging behaviors, we tend to let our emotions get involved. Because there are behaviors or things that tend to trigger us or activate some big emotions within us. So this is a skill that really takes a lot of practice. And I always found it as a classroom teacher and sometimes even now working with adults that writing it out and planning these conversations ahead of time can really help you focus on the strengths-based language. And I do want to share just a quick story about my personal life. My son he's beautifully created and unique. But in kindergarten, I would get phone call after phone call, email after email about all of the things he couldn't do. He can't sit still. He can't follow directions. He can't finish an activity. And so as an educator, like that really bothered me. And I, got really upset with him at first. And as the year went on, it turned into a frustration with the teacher that I'm not getting any positive feedback about my child. It's just what he can't do or what he doesn't do. And so going forward, hearing any feedback about his development, there was just a wall up. And I just really didn't want to hear it. Versus in later years when he had teachers that used strengths-based language, same struggles, The struggles were still there, but it was given to me with a cushion of all of the wonderful things that he can do. So, just I wanted to share that because you as educators are going to have hard conversations, and just knowing that if the relationship is there, it's going to be a lot easier. Okay, so like I said, we want to focus on what the child can do, not what they can't. So there's an example here of he can't sit still. We can just reframe that as he loves to move and explore. So that as a parent tells me, yep, he moves around a lot, but it takes off the negative edge of he can't sit still. This is something he can't do. So Rose, if you go to the next slide, especially in early childhood, we have things like rigid thinking. Instead of saying, he or she can't stand it when we have a schedule change, well, things come up. So saying he has a preference for predictability, or likes when our schedules and routines are predictable. So just switching the language a little bit to identify their preference versus the skill that they don't have.
Okay, thanks, Kayla. We're going to pop over to Tessa.
Recognizing and responding to developmental differences is a key part to supporting the whole child. Every child we know develops at their own pace, and it's our responsibility as educators to observe with intention, respond with empathy, and provide appropriate support when needed. Early identification and intervention can make a meaningful difference, and by creating an inclusive and responsive environment, we ensure that all children are given the opportunity to grow, learn, and succeed. So, you want to watch for signs that a child might need extra support. That could be, they're having trouble communicating, difficulty with movement. Maybe you're noticing that their walk, their stride is a little different, or their fine motor movements are causing some challenges for them. Maybe they're not playing appropriately with kiddos, or you notice that they prefer to kind of play alone. You can use the South Dakota Early Learning Guidelines and the CDC milestones to help you kind of determine if a child may need some extra support. As a child care provider or early childhood teacher, it's not your job or role to diagnose a child, but to track the data so that a professional can. And speaking from my position where my team does the evaluations, please make sure when you're discussing these concerns with families that you don't use terms that are diagnosing, such as saying, he may have autism, or I notice that he's really hyper a lot. He might have ADHD. Instead, just give the facts of what your concerns are. So you could say things like, I notice that the child lines up toys or prefers to play alone, has difficulties with loud noises. Just give the facts of what you're seeing and what your concerns are, rather than putting your opinion of what the diagnosis may be. And then keep notes and observations. You don't have to be a specialist to notice important patterns with a child. And by keeping those notes and observations, this can first guide your conversations with those families, but it also can help guide our evaluation process as well. Usually during the evaluation, if a child is going to a child care facility, our team likes to communicate with that teacher or that facility so that we can get a full picture of the child as well. So again, talking about, not giving diagnosis, child care providers should never diagnose or label a child without that formal evaluation. Um, when you're making those assumptions about a child's behavior or development without that proper assessment, it can lead to, first off, a misdiagnosis. The parent might come in and already feel that this is where their child is because of something that has been said. Some unnecessary stigma. If a child care provider mentions, the one we see a lot is autism, the parent does all this research on autism through Google, and they come into this evaluation just really on high alert. And ultimately, that can lead to some long term harm. While the observations are important, identifying developmental and behavioral concerns must be done through collaboration and evidence based process that includes the family as well as licensed specialists. And then this is an example of kind of like an observation sheet. It's very clean and easy to read for the families. And then, it can kind of guide your conversation with them.
Tessa, can I add to
Of
your
course.
statement?
Yes.
Okay. I know when we were kind of prepping for this, we had talked about when a teacher or a child care provider does get that idea into a parent's head that my kid has ADHD or my child is on the spectrum, and then they do the formal evaluation and it comes back maybe contradicting that initial, that really can harm the relationship maybe between the evaluation team and the family, or with the provider and the family. So I just wanted to reiterate, like, we all have been in a position where we're like, whoa, that child has XYZ, but really, really try to avoid giving your opinion on a diagnosis because it can do a lot of harm.
Agreed on both parts. And I wanted to mention on this, because we also spoke about this when we were pooling together ideas, is notice that it has the my strengths first. So you're looking at what the child can do, and hopefully that starts to frame those conversations and jumping off points with the families. So, okay, we're going to stick with Tessa.
So adapt, don't exclude. Every child deserves access to learning, and that begins with adapting the classroom rather than trying to exclude that child. We need to create flexible, responsive environments that meet diverse needs. They affirm that all students belong there. Exclusion denies children the opportunity to grow. But when we give those adaptations, it promotes, equality, engagement, and success for every learner. So some things that you can do, you can make small changes to the routine, the materials, or the classroom setup. You can make changes and scaffolding and use resources that work, and make sure you use clear and supportive communication. So now we'll look at some changes that you can make to your classroom. We're going to talk about first then statements paired with pictures. We'll talk about visual schedules and social stories. So the first thing we'll talk about is using first then statements. You always want to pair your first then statements, if you can, with pictures, especially if a child is in a very dysregulated state. They're not listening to your words, but if they see a picture, it helps them. So, saying first you clean up your toys and then you can have screen time. And then using visual schedules. One thing that I would note with using visual schedules in your classroom is if you're going to have a visual schedule for everybody up like on the board, and then you're going to have independent schedules for those kiddos that might really need to see what their day is like, and they take that off the visual schedule to go put it in a pocket. It's kind of their transition item. I would want to make sure that those pictures match. So the pictures that are on the board for everybody are the same pictures that are on that visual schedule for that independent schedule. And then you kind of have to decide with each kiddo's schedule might look different. I had kiddos that could only have one item on their visual schedule at a time because it was too distracting for them. Then I'd have some kids that could do 3 items on their visual schedule. So just kind of make sure that you're adapting it to each child and so that they can use those successfully and feel like they are being a part of the class and doing everything that they are expected to do. Then we'll go on to visual. Well, here, let's see. Oh, this is a thing suggesting for enhancing your attention or the attention of your kiddos. We did have some handouts in the email kind of about deep pressure, heavy workload. Those are some really good things to kind of get every kiddo's body regulated and ready to attend. Doing some sort of movement before a circle time or a center can really impact their attention. So these are just some ideas. And so now this is a social story. It's just stating going to the toilet at school. You can use social stories for a variety of things. I would use it to, walking to the bus or keeping our hands to ourselves, how to sit at circle time. You can use the graphic pictures, but for some kiddos, it's better if the picture is of them doing that as you're reading the story, because then they're seeing themselves doing what you're telling them to do. And they're like, oh, yeah, I remember I sat at circle with my hands in my lap, or whatever the social story is about. But sometimes there are social stories that you just can't get the pictures of that child. But that's something I would also have you guys keep in mind is if you are going to use social stories, try to make sure that the pictures are of the child doing those things. And working with a team, that I always had my speech therapist help me with the social stories. She was very knowledgeable in that. So if you have questions about that, make sure you reach out to resources that can help you. I'm always available. Like I said, I put my contact information in there, and I'm willing to help with anything that you guys may need. Something I also want to say about all of these adaptations you're making for your class, it might seem very time consuming at first, but these pictures you can use over and over again with all your different students over the years. So it might take a lot of time at first, but just know that these are things that you could reuse again.
Absolutely. And something that Kayla has done previously, and I'm sure she'd be willing to share, but if you have like a big event coming up and you are worried about how are the children going to handle a field trip, or the one that's coming to mind is when ECC does their social emotional learning day, and it's just a huge kind of open house, tons of games, it's very loud. They created a social story of the children going and doing that so that it helps all children because we're not just neurodivergent children, neurotypical children, loud noises going out of their norm that could affect them in a harmful way too. So getting that prep and practicing for something new is really beneficial in the social stories. So yeah. Okay, we're gonna bounce back over to Kayla.
All right. So we already kind of talked about it's not your job as the early childhood professional or teacher to suggest or predict a diagnosis, but we do want you to walk away tonight feeling comfortable and confident that you know the steps on how to advocate or help this child. So asking for help early and often is really important. So knowing who to go to or where to go to ask for help that is your job. Okay, so you do not have to have all the answers. And this is something that makes me so passionate about this topic is that, I went to college, I got my degree, I walked into the classroom and I felt confident until the children showed up. So I felt very overwhelmed because there were children in my classroom that had special needs that needed more support. And I felt like I was totally unprepared for that. So what I did learn quickly is that I don't need to know it all. I just need to know where to go and who to ask for help. And partnering with families is honestly step number one. Families, a lot of times, will have the answers for you. So if you have that strong relationship, like we talked about, having conversations with families using that strength-based language. So it could sound something like, I've noticed that Johnny likes when schedules and routines are consistent. Sometimes we have things come up that disrupts our typical schedule at school. Is there anything that you have found at home that helps when your schedule gets disrupted? They might have something to help you. They might not, but this starts the conversation of how can we work as a team to figure out a support for this child. So we are very lucky to have Tessa because she's who I call when I don't know the answers. So we are gonna talk about the Birth to 3 program for those of you that work with the infants to 3-year-olds. And Tessa, I'll let you explain this slide.
Okay. So this is divided into your area, and then down below in those boxes, it says who you can contact. So you'd want to find where you are on the South Dakota map, and then go down and find your coordinator. That's the person you would call if, or that's the number you could even give families to call and say, I would like to get my child screened. They'll ask, what are the concerns? They will really support the family through that process. And something to note with the Birth to 3 program, it is very family based. And so they really are trying to provide supports for that child, but make sure those supports are being given to the families and showing those families how to use those supports so that there is that consistency for that child.
Perfect. And I know this is a little pixelated, but you guys should have received this as a handout in the email as well. And then I would also venture to guess, well, right there, the website listed or on RCAS. Is this available there too, Tessa?
I actually found this on the South Dakota education site.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so the DOE, the website there.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
And I would just add too, sometimes like knowing who to call can be a barrier for advocating for children. So if you have a child or a parent that needs this information and you can't find it, just call us or email us and we will find it for you.
And I will say 2 of these people listed here, I know I went to high school with one and the other one used to work for ECC. They're phenomenal. They won't make you feel inept. They're going to welcome any questions and resources you have. So don't be afraid. Okay, so we're going to stick with Tessa.
All right.
Hey, Rose.
I think that was Elena.
Yes, it was. Hold on. Kenzie, come back. Found it. Okay, so for parents not in the stand front, because before school age, my child, he needed that help. He wanted that help, and we knew what we were expecting, but it took us until school age to get that help. How do children who are not in the school age system get the help that would progress them to get the help for the ADHD, the all of the above?
So, as a parent, I would just say, being that advocate, I would say you probably know now what you wish you would have known
Mhm.
then. So, having the ability to reach out to someone like Tessa, like, or have the ability to look at the data that you're seeing at home and saying, oh, he can do this, but he can't do XYZ. So, maybe that is something that I want to get some sort of outside support. And that birth to three, so before you're really getting any sort of preschool or formal education, that's going to be the context. So that map that was just shared, and then that should be in the email resources. So if you're a birth to three teacher, that's going to be your go-to. That's going to be like if you have questions or you're wanting to start the conversation about potential concerns that you're seeing, that's going to be the phone number you're going to share. Then once they
Okay.
turn three, they go into receiving services through Tessa and the public school system. And so then that contact information is actually going to be on the next slide. So Tessa can kind of walk you through that process.
Okay, thank you, because there's a couple in my group that I'm just like, how do I help them before I got the help?
Yep.
Mhm.
So sit
Yep.
tight. You're going to hear it right now.
All right. So, advocating for services and support, early childhood is a critical period. We always say you want to get services, the sooner the better. And when those concerns arise, getting timely access to those resources can make that lasting difference. You want to work closely with families, specialists, and educators to help ensure that every child is receiving that individualized support that they deserve to reach their full potential. So, at the beginning of the school year, my screening team goes to both of the YFS buildings and RAI, and we screen all of the children that are 3 to 5 who are attending those facilities. And then once a month from October to February, any child who resides in the Rapid City area school boundaries and are ages 3 to 5, they can participate in the screenings. All the parents would need to do is call the Jefferson building, which is my office number that I put in the chat. They just call and say, I want to sign my child up for the October 20th screening. This screening schedule is posted on the Facebook page for Rapid City Area Schools, as well as usually the Rapid City Area Schools website. So if you are looking for the dates, those are where you can look. And for these screenings, the areas that are assessed, they look at their early learning concepts, their language, articulation. So, how well are they being understood? Are they using the correct sounds that they should be for their age? They also look at their gross motor skills and their fine motor skills. The screenings that are at Jefferson, we also usually have a vision screening from Northern Plains Eye Foundation, and our audiologist does a hearing assessment on the kiddos as well. And while the kiddos are getting screened, the parents are filling out a survey regarding their child's like adaptive skills. So dressing, feeding themselves, drinking from an open cup, those kind of things. And then also their social development. So by the end of the evaluation, we have the strengths and possibly needs in every area that we looked at throughout that screening. Okay, so oftentimes you are the first to notice when something just isn't quite right. And your voice matters because a lot of times kiddos spend more time in a child care facility than they are at home, especially during the school year. So by learning those milestones, connecting with those children, you will equip yourself to recognize when, accommodations might need to be needed, or if you are now needing to maybe involve the Birth to Three program or the school system. Talk with those families about what you're seeing, and remember being kind and respectful, using that appropriate language, the strength-based language. And also remember to, when you are talking with those families, to just give the facts of what you are noticing. Because many families, like we were just talking, they don't realize that there are services that can be provided for kids starting at birth. Most of the time, there are families that said, "Oh, I thought I had to wait till they were in kindergarten." So now knowing that they have these options can help get them that early intervention as soon as possible. Okay, so knowing your role as an advocate means understanding that your voice matters, and you are standing up for what is best for the children and those families. So as a provider and educator, advocacy isn't just speaking up, it's about being informed, intentional, and collaborative, and ensuring that every child has the access to those opportunities, the supports, and ultimately the respect they deserve. Advocacy starts with recognizing your influence and using it to promote equality, inclusion, and positive change for those children. You don't need to be a specialist to speak up for those child's needs. Advocacy means helping others understand what a child needs to grow and learn. And this might include sharing your observations, helping families fill out forms, giving them those numbers to contact the appropriate people, and then asking for training or support. When I taught special education preschool, I worked really closely with daycare providers and childcare facilities who wanted to know, what are the IEP goals for that child, or how could they help implement them? And they wanted to do that so it was organically and spontaneously. One idea that worked well for keeping clear communication between three environments, the school, the daycare, and the home, was to have a notebook that traveled with the child. And on the first page, I always had a release of information that was signed by the parent stating that this information could be provided to the school and the daycare. And if you have questions about what a release of information should look like or needing one, you can contact ECC or myself as well, and we can help get you one of those. So that's what I had on the first page of the notebook. And then the notebook would have their IEP goals in there, maybe stuff that's being worked on, and notes between the adults. There were also times that the child care provider and educator had never even seen an IEP. So I would sit down with them, I explain it. So now I want to show you an example of an IEP from Rapid City area schools. I do want to note that every district and state does also have different IEP layouts. So if you get an IEP and you're not understanding it, reach out to that special educator and they can help explain it to you. Okay.
While Tessa is sharing her screen, I just wanted to touch on something. We have a couple of providers tonight that aren't in Rapid City area. So your contact info, reach out to your school district office and they're going to help you, because every school district is required to have a child find type of program for those 3 to 5-year-olds. So you're going to be able to reach out to, the Custer School District, Hill City School District, Sturgis School District, Douglas, any of our surrounding communities. They're going to have a very similar program to what Tessa has spoke on tonight. So,
all right. Can you all see the IEP
Yep.
Okay. So this first page is basically a summary. It's stating who is the child, what day did the IEP take place. Over here, it'll have, was this an initial eligibility that they were just found eligible for special education? Is it an annual review? So this child's already been on an IEP and we're writing a new one because an IEP has to be written every year. And then 3-year reevaluation would mean that they were evaluated, they've been on an IEP, but every 3 years a child has to be reevaluated. So a new evaluation took place, and now we're writing an IEP to go along with that new evaluation. Date services begin. This is generally 5 days after the day that we had the IEP meeting. The reason for this is that we give parents 5 days to go home, process what was just gone on at the meeting, process the IEP goals, and if they want any changes made, they have those 5 days to come back and ask for some changes to be made. So that's why it's 5 days after the meeting date. And then everyone that is in attendance at that meeting will sign and date it. And then this bottom part is, it'll state how much special education support are they getting, if they get transportation, and then down here is a snippet from the least restrictive environment. So it's stating what environment is that child being placed in. The second page of the IEP is when a child it's their first IEP ever. The parents are giving consent for that child to receive special education support. So they will sign this the first time, and then after that, they don't sign it again. Then we go on to the strengths and needs. So in all the areas that the child qualified in for support, we would have their strengths and what they're currently doing in those areas. And then in the needs section, that's where we would like to see the child in the next year. And then the goals are taken from each of those areas, and a goal is written for that next year. The educational impact is an overview of the child's needs and how those are affecting their overall development. Something we always say to parents is the educational impact does sound very negative, but it's because we are only showing their needs, because that's what special education is about, is what are they needing. Parent input is when we put their input. Usually this is prior to the IEP meeting. And then we take notes throughout the whole meeting of things that were discussed, any additional parent input, and those are all put on the meeting note document. So now we get into the meat of the IEP. So this is special factors. The first question is the student limited English proficient? This means if the child only speaks English, then it would be marked no. If there's different language that is spoken in the home or the child is bilingual, then this would be marked yes, and then there would be an explanation underneath of it. The next one is, are there any special communication needs? This would be marked yes if that child is using any other modes of communication, such as sign language, pictures, a communication device. Any of that would be marked yes then, because they do have some special communication needs. Assistive technology, if the special communication box is marked yes, then the assistive technology devices would be marked yes, because that is considered a low technology device, is pictures. But there's also, this could also be marked yes if a child requires any devices such as a walker or special seating like a Riften for their core support. So that would be all there. Braille is marked no unless that child is blind and requiring Braille. And then, does the student's behavior impede his learning or the learning of others? And I marked yes and gave some ideas of what that could look like. So the behavior that this child has is when presented with transitions, change in a schedule, or non-preferred task, he may hit, kick, bite, scratch, throw things, and that he is also unaware of common dangers and does not respond to inhibitory words such as no, stop, wait. So when these things happen, the strategies or the accommodations that we are going to provide him could be first then statements, those picture schedules, social stories, one-on-one teaching. He might need access to sensory breaks to assist in those meltdowns, and then close adult proximity for those common dangers, making sure he's safe. And then those reinforcers are when he is understanding a common danger, or he does listen to the inhibitory word no or stop. We would give him some verbal praise, giving him, if he does a non-preferred task, then after that we could give him a preferred task. So these are just some ideas of what could be in that section. Then the next page is goals. And so the top box is the goal, and then the bottom two are benchmarks. So they need to meet these two benchmarks in order to meet the goal. And it says in the second column, codes. Those are how are we going to get the data to say that they've met this goal or that they're making progress in this goal. And so down below, it's 1 through 10. And I said for this goal, it would be a 2. We would be observing how he's transitioning throughout his day. And progress codes, this year, Rapid City Area Schools gives out, we're going to be doing 2 times a year, they get progress on the IEP goals. And these are mailed or given to parents. But these progress notes would mean, are they making progress? Has it not been addressed, or have they met it? And then there would be comments in the last column. So I just wrote a couple of example IEP goals. And then this page is for any accommodations or modifications. It's not required for pre-K through 5th grade, but there sometimes is those things marked. So, if they have the communication devices or gross motor items, anything that they might need, sometimes it might say, especially once they're in school, they need a calculator on math tests, or they need items read aloud during a test. Things like that would be on this page. Then we get to our related services. So this would be any area that they qualify in, besides what they're getting from the special educator. So only related services. So OT, PT, you'll see on there, speech language, and transportation. Those are usually the ones that you might see on a preschool student's IEP. And then we also look at physical education, and in preschool, we don't have it. And then we do look at that hearing aid, if they need any hearing aid maintenance. This next page is an easy page. It's marked no at the very bottom because this is for kids once they're in 3rd grade and if they need accommodations on those standardized tests. So this one won't be marked for any preschool students. It's just marked no. Then we get into the least restrictive environment page. So the top part is what I showed you guys earlier, where you pick what program that child is going to be in. Then down below is where you will see the services that are provided by the special education teacher and or para. And so it'll say how much hours total in all those areas is that child getting from just the special education teacher. And then again, that justification of why did we choose that placement for that child. And then the last page is for summer school, or what we call extended school year. Generally, preschool students don't qualify for this service, especially for those kiddos that do have difficulties with transitions, new staff members, because summer school is at a different school usually than they attend, and it's with different staff. It's only about 7 weeks in the summer. And so generally, we just don't advise our preschool students to attend ESY. But if they did, it would say what goals are they working on this summer and why are we requesting it? Have they made regression? Are they having a skill that's just emerging and we really want to continue working on those? Or it might be a really critical life skill that they've just developed and we need to continue to work on. And then the last page of the IEP is called a parental prior written notice. But basically what that means is it's the meeting notes. It's stating what is everything that we discussed. What are they eligible under? What category? What is their disability that they've been diagnosed with? What related services will they get? Will they get speech or physical therapy or occupational therapy? The educational placement is stating what placement are we providing our services in. And then the rest of it, A is an explanation of why did we have that meeting. Usually it's to review the evaluation results and write an IEP to address the child's needs. B, we look at anything that we rejected. So if we rejected transportation, rejected summer school, anything, and why were those rejected. C is list of all the evaluation, or if it's an annual IEP, it'll usually say like teacher notes, progress monitoring. It'll say, how was this IEP developed? What did we use? And then under D, that's usually where we put any parent notes from the meeting, any questions they might have, anything like that. So this is just an overview of the whole meeting. And then the last page again is, like I said, we give the parents 5 calendar days to look through the IEP, make sure they don't have any changes that they need or want or anything they want to discuss more. We can have them waive those 5 days. Generally, that doesn't happen, but they have the right to waive those and they would initial it. So that is the IEP. I know there's a lot of information, but again, if you guys ever have any questions, reach out to that special educator that provided you that IEP, or you can always reach out to myself, and I would be glad to help assist you guys.
I think another thing to note about IEPs in our field is that this is really a tool for you in the classroom to know what accommodations you can try, or what kind of matches what they're doing with special services and at home, so that everybody can kind of get on the same page of what are our goals, what accommodations might this child need. And like Tessa, I thought of this when you were talking about the summer school situation. That would be a great time for you, if you have these children in the summer, to say, okay, special services have stopped, but here's what I can keep working on at daycare, at preschool, at summer camp, whatever your setting is.
I agree. You took the words out of my mouth, Kayla. And I wanted to add on that it allows you, because like Tessa said, a lot of times you guys see these children more often than anyone else, to hopefully start to do these things in spontaneous ways. I mean, the explicit instruction is great, and they are getting that if they are receiving services. But an example is if an IEP goal is for a child to successfully make play bids, and you see this child practicing it, or you see an opportunity to help scaffold that, you should not have that knowledge that that's their goal and be able to help foster that in the moment. So, okay. We are going to bounce back over to Kayla.
Okay, so embracing lifelong learning. We've talked a lot about like where we can go to reach out, what trainings are out there, maybe accommodations, but you are going to have children every single year. You may have a child that maybe was on the spectrum one year, and you figure out what works for that child. And then the next year you have another child that's maybe on the spectrum and needs something totally different. So just know that it's an ongoing opportunity for you to learn new skills, learn new accommodations. If you want to go the next slide, Rose. Know that you don't need a college degree to keep learning. So it doesn't have to be a formal education or college course that you take to keep learning about special education. You all obviously know that ECC has lots of free trainings. We're always there for you to call or email, ask your questions. Something for me as a teacher was just talking to my coworkers, those that were more experienced. I tend to shy away from encouraging people to talk to like the previous year's teacher if there was a rough relationship, but sometimes when that teacher has figured out what works for this child, what doesn't work for this child, so talking to your coworkers, getting ideas from them, asking questions with families. It could be someone totally disconnected from the child. Just make sure you are protecting that confidentiality. Throw a different name in there, and stay curious. So don't try to avoid accepting, well, I don't know. I just don't know what to do for this child. I give up. And know that what you learn today can change a child's future. So when we don't give up, when we keep advocating, keep reaching out for training and support, that you will make a difference in these children's lives and how they see themselves and how they see themselves in school. One little caution, Tessa kind of mentioned it earlier, talking about parents going on Google. Same is true for you as educators. So we all do it. We all search the web for ideas. But I'm not saying don't do that. Just make sure that you are seeking out, what's the word I'm looking for?
Credible sources.
Credible. Thank you. Credible sources. And honestly, reaching out to ECC, even if we don't have the answer, a lot of times we can kind of point you to an article or a website or something that we have already vetted and know to be a credible source. So the growth and fixed mindset, I kind of touched on this at the beginning, but knowing that you're going to make mistakes, especially with the strengths-based language, your conversations with parents might not feel perfect every time, but that growth versus fixed mindset is knowing that we can learn from our mistakes. We know how to do it better next time. We're self-reflecting. Did I do everything I could for this child? And not giving up, versus a fixed mindset, which, you know, is just, well, it is what it is. I'm never going to know. I give up, or this is good enough. So really honing into that growth mindset when working with these children that maybe have different abilities.
Okay, now we're going to listen to both Kayla and Tessa on this last one.
You can go first, Tessa.
Okay. So, as an educator, I strive to be consistent with being a model of respect and inclusion, showing children through my actions that every person deserves to be valued and heard. We want to treat children and family with dignity, embracing those differences, promoting kindness, create that learning environment where everyone feels safe, accepted, and empowered to be themselves. And inclusion isn't just something we're teaching, it's something that we should be living every day.
The only thing I really want to add to that is kind of touched on this slide, but we want to make sure that we are never talking poorly or negatively about these children or their families, especially in front of that child, but in front of any of the children. And being very careful even when you're talking to coworkers because children will hear you. So always want to model that respect and inclusion. You're going to have hard days, you're going to need to vent, but just being very respectful about the space and who you're doing that with. The other thing on this slide that was mentioned was using books, songs, stories, with different abilities, different cultures. And this is a little snippet from the Pyramid Model website. It has this awesome book list that they give you. So it has the title and author here, and all of these books touch on inclusion, touch on feelings, emotional regulation, culture. Is this the complete list, Rose?
This is the PDF shortened list. The
Okay.
full list is just on their resources. So if you guys go to challengingbehavior.org and go to their resource hub and search book list, it's going to just pour in I don't want to say hundreds, but that's what it's going to feel like. Books. And then there's also a lot of times correlating lessons that go with them. So, like the kissing hand has a whole unit that you can do about it. So, there's a lot of really great things to be found on that website.
Great.
Okay. All right, so we've heard from both experts, and they've given you their principles and practices that we hope you guys took away some things, some knowledge, some tools. Here is going to be a quick reference for advocacy because that is your role is to speak for these children, right? And to have the voice and the power to do so. So we're going to start with Tessa.
So when do you want to speak up? If you notice a child is falling behind in more areas, it could just even be one. If you notice that that child is getting frustrated, or is not participating with their peers like the rest of the students are, or if a family asks for help or expresses concern, those are times that you want to speak up.
And now Kayla's going to give you some scripted examples.
Yeah, so these are some little scripts of what you can say and how to get you started. So saying, I've noticed something and I want to share it with you because I care about your child. Or if you have noticed and have documentation of some of these concerns, you can talk to the parents and say, have you ever thought about asking for a developmental screener? A lot of times parents are the ones that come to you first with their concerns. So having that kind of sentence starter of, you might want to consider this, and then being prepared with the birth to 3 information or those screening dates like Tessa had mentioned. And letting them know that there are services that can help. and that you will support them and help them in getting started. So Tessa mentioned earlier, a lot of parents, a lot of providers don't know that services are available before they get to school. And honestly, speaking from experience, it is a much easier journey if you can get them started before they get into the school.
Love it. Okay, so next steps for you guys. Both of the experts tonight mentioned both of these a couple of times. So the South Dakota Early Learning Guidelines, I would imagine most of you are familiar with this. If you're not, this great document walks you through that continuum that is a child's development from birth all the way actually through kindergarten, because there's a kindergarten crosswalk. So not only can you use it to kind of scaffold and lesson plan based off of a child's development, but you can also look at it through the lens of, okay, they can do this. So there's that strength space. What do I want them to be able to do? And it's going to put into context too. They are a 4-year-old, but their skill set with whatever domain is showing at an 18-month-old. Maybe I need to be more observant in the classroom and try and watch if they can do this and I'm just missing it. Or is this an actual concern that I need to be aware of, document with data, right, and notes, and then potentially have those conversations with the parents. The CDC milestone tracker app is a phenomenal tool. You can download it as a provider and kind of mess around. As a parent, it's amazing as well. That little Candyland looking roadmap that was on one of Kayla's first slides, that's from the CDC as well. There were broken down age groups for CDC milestones that Tessa had provided as resources. So both of these are really great guiding documents that you guys should be able to hopefully use immediately if you don't. If you don't have access or don't have an early learning guidelines book, you can get them for free through ECC, or they are available online in for free PDF, and I can drop that link in the chat for anybody that's interested. Professional growth. So Kayla had touched on, you don't have to have a degree, right, to continue to learn. Some of the things that you could be doing is joining a organization. So Council for Exceptional Children. This is called the CEC, and they have amazing free webinars, speakers, resources. So this is a really great one that you could join. NACI is another really good one. As far as furthering your education, like Kayla said, we have great trainings here at ECC. If you have your CDA, you can actually articulate that into college credit. So if you wanted to go on and get your bachelor's in early childhood special education, your CDA counts for between 9 and 11 credit hours at all of the South Dakota Regent universities. So if you wanted to go to Black Hills State and get a triple major like Tessa, you could. And she said she absolutely needs great teachers in her field. So this can be a career path for you. If you don't have your CDA, you can email me because we just opened up registration. So that is a great, it's almost like an associate's degree, right? It gives you that foundational knowledge so that you have the expertise to speak to some of these things and you know child development on a more secure level. Okay, now we're going to navigate over to some pre-submitted questions. Let me check the time though. Ooh, we are running low on time, so we're going to cruise through these. So Kayla or Tessa, whoever wants to start.
Okay. So for that first question about balancing the needs of children, one thing I can say is collaboration is key. Use those resources and specialists and other staff. I work with 8 other ladies that I really lean on in their fields of expertise because I don't know everything about physical education or occupational therapy. So making sure you collaborate. Sometimes, breaking your class into smaller groups for parts of the day can help disperse the workload between the 2 teachers that are in that classroom. Pairing children with strengths that are different can foster that collaboration, and then it helps children learn from one another. And something that I always had to say is you have to be okay with knowing that what works this year might not work next year. And so you might have to readjust every year, but working and collaborating together should help in that.
And I would add to that first question that all of those accommodations or like the first then, the visual schedules, social stories, all of those different accommodations we talked about earlier, they're not going to hurt your kiddos that don't need them. So I would just encourage you that if you need to do it for one or two children, maybe consider it just doing it for everybody so that hopefully that doesn't give you more work. But none of those special things you do in the classroom to help a child it's going to help all of them.
Absolutely agree with both of them. Okay, question number 2. Kayla, we'll stick with you since you just spoke.
Sure. Yeah, so this is actually a question that I've asked a lot. What do I do if families don't agree with me? And to put it simply, you just have to worry about the things that you can change. So keep documenting, keep recording, keep advocating, but know that you can focus on what you are doing when the child is in your care, because we can't force families to agree with us. And I think most of us know that our children act different at home than when they're at school. So it might not be that the family's trying to be difficult. It might just be that they don't see it yet. So keep documenting, keep accommodating, and just focus on the things that you can control.
I would agree 100% with that, Kayla. And then also, just presenting the options. Sometimes I've had child care providers say, there is this screening that the school district puts on. You can see where your child's at. And then that hard conversation then turns to my team having that conversation with parents. So there's also that, just like Kayla said, advocating. You can keep saying, putting it, even if it's a little flyer that goes in all of the backpacks of here's the screening date coming up. If you want it, sign up. Or if you have concerns, here's the Child Find Coordinator number to request an evaluation. So then maybe you're not singling out that child that you have concerns for, but you're giving that information to all of the families.
Love it. Okay, so we're wrapping up. This last quote, inclusive, good quality education is a foundation for dynamic and equitable societies. So that's by Desmond Tutu. And I think, and I hope that all of you can agree with that, and especially after all the information that our two experts provided you with. So I want to thank you for spending your evening with us as we explored this topic about supporting abilities, inclusivity, and advocacy. We know that inclusion isn't just a checklist or a classroom setup, it's a mindset. So it's a commitment to seeing every child within your care as capable, worthy, and deserving of connection and opportunity. And it's work that can feel both deeply rewarding and deeply complex. And that's why we hope tonight some of it was broken down in more digestible forms. You heard stories and strategies from both of our experts about adapting, thinking creatively, collaborating with purpose, and standing alongside those families to ensure that no child is left behind. Hopefully you gained some tools and that you're able to return to your program, your in-home, your classroom, and carry this message forward with anybody that you work with. So inclusion is not about doing more, it's about doing it differently. So looking at these children with a fresh set of eyes, believing in their potential, and then building a space where everyone belongs. So thank you for your dedication to these young children and the hard work that you guys do every day. I am gonna skip over wrap-up questions. If you have any, drop them in the chat. I'm going to navigate over to our evaluation so that you can get started on that. However, if you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or come off of mute and ask either of our experts. But I definitely want to get the evaluation up for you guys, and we'll come back to these as well. There is the evaluation QR code, and I will also drop the link in the chat. And then if you want training credit, you'll need to fill out the evaluation. If you're not concerned with that, then you don't need to. We would still love it for feedback at ECC. We love data too. So we want to know what we can do better. And honestly, that's how the premise for this series came about, was looking at your guys' feedback. So while you guys are doing that, let me go back and talk about these couple of things really quick. It'll take me. Okay. Make sure you guys can see that. Yes. So if you're not familiar with our online website, this is where all of our trainings are located. We have slimmed down our trainings that are offered because we're trying to be more intentional with our private trainings. So hopefully your facility will take advantage of that. The month of July, all of the trainings offered should tie back into our concept of abilities and inclusivities. One that I wanted to mention here is Kayla's on July 30th, using visuals to support challenging behavior, because as Kayla and Carol would preach, all behavior is what? A form of communication. So you saw a lot of visual examples, so come to this training if you want more hands-on, tangible resources.
Yeah, I will add that class is a make and take. So we will be making visual schedules and first then boards, all of those things that Tessa had talked about earlier. So if you're needing some visuals, that would be a great class to attend.
Perfect. Thank you, Kayla. Wanted to throw up the evening with the experts. Next month is Sarah Vining, and she is a community resiliency model expert. Is that right, Kayla? And she is going to join Krista and talk about wellness and how you can pour back into yourself so that you can pour into the children and the teachers and the community. So that'll be a great one. There's the list of the other ones. This is also on our training catalog, but just wanted to have that plug for next month. Then if any of you are still working on the evaluation, I wanted to share this trailer. This full documentary is free viewing on YouTube. I will drop the link, but I'm going to play the trailer right now.
Emilio. I see you.
When I looked at him, I just saw a baby. For me, he just looked like my child. I've always kind of dreaded when we have to find a school for him.
I just want to prep you. I think it's going to be a little bit of a battle.
So you're telling me my son is not even on the picture of the curve? Like, why don't you create a bell curve that fits every child?
We believe in your potential, and we are going to do everything we can to help you develop it.
The vast majority of kids with intellectual disabilities is still segregated in the United States.
I don't know what the DOE is afraid of, but they don't want it on camera. There's very little transparency into this process, and as a parent, it's incredibly intimidating. Emilio, say hi.
Hey!
It should not be okay that almost 60,000 students in New York City are in segregated settings.
I want him to be exposed. I want him to take advantage of every opportunity every other kid has.
I didn't know he was different, but the world knew he was different. And at that moment, I learned that my child needed to be included like every other child.
You have to be your child's foremost advocate, because no one is going to do it to a greater extent than you.
By opening the door for someone like Amelia, we're opening the door for someone like me, a queer student, or for a transgender student, for the Black students. It's a fight worth fighting for.
I am arguing for passion. We must have passion if we're going to change the world.
You don't know Emilio. You've seen him once. You don't know what's appropriate for him.
I know deep inside of me that he's going to do everything. He just needs to be given the opportunity.
Okay, we'll drop that link in the chat. And then let me make sure that nobody had any questions that popped up in there. So that is the link to the full video that, like I said, is free on YouTube. I don't see any questions, just a lot of thank you to both Kayla and Tessa. So agreed. Thank you to our wonderful experts and all the knowledge and experience that they brought to the table tonight. I'm really happy that we were able to speak on this and that they both humored me and said they would do it. So I'll let you each give a little closing statement if you'd like.
First off, Rose, you're hard to say no to. But also, this is something that I know, Tessa, you are, because it's your life, but this is something I'm super passionate about, both professionally and personally. So I just encourage you guys, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you don't know what to do, reach out to us or to your colleagues and advocate for those babies, because sometimes you're the only one that's doing it.
Yes, thank you guys for attending. I have been so passionate about early childhood education, and especially for those kiddos who are needing more accommodations and have needs. And so I'm glad that I was able to be a part of this. Thanks, Rose, for asking me to be a part of it so that we can get the word out there that kiddos can start getting those services as soon as possible. So yes, thank you for joining. And if you do have any questions or anything, you can always reach out to me.
Perfect. Did anyone have any questions or thoughts that they wanted from either expert before I release them, since I've kept them longer than they agreed to? No? Okay. Well, Tessa and Kayla, thank you so much. You don't have to hang out with me. I'm going to wait and make sure all the evaluations come through. So go enjoy your evening, and thank you so much, both of you ladies.
Thanks, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, Rose. Hey, I paid attention through the whole thing, but kind of like talked to the kids in the middle. Like, yeah. But I have a lot of things about to say about the IEP. Yeah.
You've had some personal
But
opinions on
was there filling out things right now and getting it all done. Sorry.
No, you're good. And I'll bring all the resources. I don't know.
Please do, because I think that's going to help with a couple of ours.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll have time to print them off tonight, but this week at some point I will definitely bring them with.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you.
Ma'am.